Okay, so I'm trying to be able to read the first chapter of my book on here as well as on Facebook, but the camera isn't functioning too well right now. So, okay. So the book is called Wish, and it has this picture is a dragon, and then some birds in the background, and pillars of clouds, and then a guy standing there, and on the bottom it says, Wish is a boy diagnosed with bipolar type 2. So this is to show like the color meaning that this is the dragon Comfort, and that's her color, purple. So I'll start by reading the back of the cover, the back cover page. Comfort is the female pink dragon who assists Wish, and Wish is the guy right here, throughout his times of need with uplifting and encouragement. Comfort is a wonderful companion. Chapter 1 says, There was a time that the clouds were inhabited by different creatures akin to emotions. Your deepest, darkest desires found paths and homes up there. The clouds were divided into sections which caused several reflections on those that lived down below. Those that lived down below got the better half and felt whatever was going on up in the skies. There was a side where lust resided, dark, stormy, and glaring. That was how it was constantly. Some of a few others that lived in the sky were anger, jealousy, and joy. They went down to the world down below, affecting and influencing those that lived there, becoming one with them, getting into their heads, manifesting themselves as emotions and thoughts. No one down below could really say what was going on up in the skies. The beings that lived in the sky were depictions of human emotions. Wish was a 6-year-old boy who had found himself living in the world in the skies, the world that belonged to emotions. The boy stood atop a mush of clouds. There was a whole lot of wildness around him. From where he stood, he couldn't really see much of what was going on around him, but he could hear most of it, and what he could really hear was the sound of the chaos happening to the left of him. He was young, but he knew a lot about all that went on up in the clouds and was quite ignorant about what went on down below. It had to be envy and jealousy getting into their usual argument. They were always at each other's throats as they proclaimed that one was more superior to the other. They were always on a roll, and no one bothered to settle their spats anymore. Wish stared up at the white-winged birds that flew by him, and suddenly a feeling engulfed him. He watched the birds as they moved away in a V-shaped pattern. They are so free, not tethered, the child thought. Wish was alone in the cloudy world that surrounded him with no end in sight nor any form of direction. He didn't even remember where he was from. All Wish remembered was waking up in a cloudy sea with no one in sight less than a year ago. If he had any parents, and if he had any family, he knew them not. They were probably not searching for him, and even if they were, for them not to have found him in over a year, it only meant that he was far away from them. He knew he was different from every being that lived up on the clouds. He sometimes wondered if he was from the world down below. He was not sure he would ever know. Wish heard cracks, and he sighed. Envy and jealousy's fight had become physical, as usual. He stepped away from the steep, cloudy edge and walked through the cloud-filled fields back to the little alcove he had been residing in for the past year. Having to live alone without anyone caring or looking out for him had caused the child to mature drastically. And that was why, for his 6 years, he was way older in mind. Wish settled onto the white clouds in his alcove, and he looked all around him. He wondered what the world out there held in store for him. Wish drew his feet up to his chin, and not being able to control his emotions, he broke into tears. Huge dollops of tears rolled down his cheeks as he cried harder. He had no idea why he was crying. Frankly, there was a lot to choose from. He just felt really depressed in that moment. "There you go, crying again. It's really such a shame, you know," a voice interrupted Wish, and he raised his tear-stained face. He looked at the gray-colored Pity as she shook her head. "Every time I see you, kid, you are always crying. So what's the matter this time? Have you finally figured it out?" Wish shook his head, and Pity sighed and shrugged as he said, "Well, there is no way I can help your pain, kid. All I can tell you is sorry. Just stop crying, all right? You are a kid. You should be running around and having fun, not balled up in your quite shabby home. I really do feel sorry for you, and I wish that I could help you, but all I can do is offer my sympathy, you know." Page 2. Wish nodded his head as he sobbed. "Thank you, Pity. How about you head towards the western paths? I hear that Joy lives just somewhere around there when she isn't gallivanting down below spreading cheer to all. You just might find something that cheers you up." "I don't think that's going to be of help when I don't even know why I feel such heavy sorrow," Wish said softly. Pity shrugged as he said, "Why don't you try it out? What do you have to lose? I would go with you, but there are a lot of sad beings down below in the north. I have to go aid them. I do hope you cheer up, kid." Wish watched Pity receding back, and he sighed. Pity was not actually his friend, but he had been the only one who really spoke to him around here. Most of the others just let him be. Pity was right. He was a kid and had nothing holding him back there. He might as well head westward and see what he could find. Wish stood up and dusted himself. He rubbed his stomach as he felt a slight bit of hunger. Grumbling to himself, the kid started out on the path that led towards the western peaks. As he moved forward, he could still hear the chaos erupting from envy and jealousy's spat. He could not help wondering what they were causing to those that were down below, those that were living under the clouds. Wish climbed up a shadowy mountain peak, and he sighed as he looked around. He could see a lot going on around him, a great contrast from the area he had just left behind. He looked back and he sighed. He did not know if he could ever return to the white clouds that he had called home for a year. Before him were darker and murky clouds, the clouds that lust and wrath lived on. He had heard quite a few things about them whenever Pity came over and went on and on, supposedly trying to cheer him up, but really it was because Pity loved talking and retelling his adventures. Wish inhaled a long and sharp breath, and he headed down the dark path that snaked up the mountain before him. Why do I have to face such darkness in my quest to find a reason to be happy? Is this even going to be successful, because I do not feel myself getting any happier? The kid wondered. Just as he got onto a peak, specks of snow started to fall onto him from the higher levels of clouds. He looked up at the layer of clouds that lay above the clouds he lived on, marveling at the white specks that were floating down. He had only ever heard of snow from the only person he ever spoke to, Pity. Pity had said how marvelous it was to feel snow up here in this region of the clouds, but he remembered Pity saying that it was more marvelous snow when you were down below. Wish did not know much about what was down below, and sometimes when Pity spoke, he did not feel that Pity was exaggerating some of the experiences that he had. But if there was one thing that was sure, Pity had not lied about, it was how marvelous and amazing snow felt, especially when it fell on your tongue. Wish stuck his tongue out, feeling the coolness and tasting the snow on his tongue. Why don't I feel happy when I just experienced something marvelous? The kid wondered. He sighed as the snow came down in torrents. He found himself a spot to rest his head in a dark, cloudy cave, quite similar to his old home except for the darkened clouds. I would just have to sleep here and wait for the bright to come, Wish said out loud to himself. He curled into a ball as he stared at the swirling snow out there, hoping that sleep could find him this time. Wish had always had difficulty sleeping ever since he woke up on the clouds years ago. Sleeping for him was just like his sorrow. Page 3. He tried to make the sorrow go away. He tried to make the sleep come to him, but he was never really successful. Sometimes he spent most of his time jumping around so that he could get exhausted, but that plan was rarely ever successful. Bright came very quickly, and Wish jumped to his feet, eager to continue his journey to find a source of happiness. Just like he had thought concerning his sleep, he had not been able to get even shut-eye. He had spent the entire night tossing and turning, so of course he had been very glad when the bright started to peek in through the mustiness in the dark of the night. The snow had stopped falling some time while it was still very dark, and he had stayed in his curled up position because of the cold. Wish stepped out of the cave and he looked around, amazed at how the world around him had changed overnight just because of a snowfall. He found himself considering living in lust territory. That way he could get to see snow often, but in a second, as the cold seeped through his shirt, he shook his head. Living on the clouds was already cold enough. As much as he loved the snowfall, it only made the clouds colder. There was no way he would feel better living in such a situation, the kid thought. Wish bent over and took a deep breath in, and then he released it. It was time to get started on his trip towards the west. He looked up at the clouds above him, and from the swirling that he saw, he knew that snow still fell again. It was best that he be on his way if he was going to get any closer to his destination. His little hands swinging beside him, he bounded up the mountains. He got to a peak, and he looked around and then down. There was still a great distance that he had to get to if he was going to get to the western peaks. Just as he made to slide down the mountains, Wish heard a soft whisper. His eyes narrowed. Was it his imagination, he wondered? Was he wishing so much for company that now he had started to imagine a companion? Wish shook his head, deciding that it had just been his imagination. He stepped forward again, and once more, he heard the sound. Groaning, he looked around, sure that this time he had heard a sound. Wish moved tentatively towards the sound as it became more frequent. The sound drew him in, and he followed it. In the next moment, Wish found himself staring at a covered heap of snow. His eyes widened as he found a creature buried in snow up to its neck. It was pinkish in color and stared up at him with wide brown eyes. "Help me," the creature whispered. Wish fell to his knees, and using his hands, he started shoveling the snow away. He kept at it at a fast pace, desperate to save this poor creature that had asked for his help. A while later, Wish succeeded in getting the creature out of the hole. His mouth fell open as he stared at the dragon that was standing before him. Never had he thought he would ever come across one. Of course, he had heard a lot about the creature from Pity. Pity was his go-to for information about this world and the world below and higher above. And from what Pity had told him, he really was not safe in the presence of a dragon, and so the little boy jumped back very much scared. "Thank you for saving me." "There is no reason for you to be scared," the dragon smiled at him. "You're not going to hurt me?" the boy stammered. The dragon moved closer to him and placed a wing around him. Page 4. Why should I? I do not hurt humans. I try to help them find inner peace. You are just a kid, but I can feel that you are facing so much inner turmoil. Why is that? The dragon asked. What is turmoil? Who is a human? the kid asked, and the dragon smiled at him, and patted his cheeks. My name is Comfort, and from now henceforth, I'm going to be with you and try to help you out as much as I can. It is obvious that you don't know a lot about who you are and where you are from, she said. What is your name and where are you headed? Wish shrugged, and he said, I am Wish, and I was heading to the western peaks, trying to find something that will make me happy. Well, let's go together. I am a fast means of movement, and you don't have to be afraid, Wish. I won't hurt you. Now get on my back so we can go. As Wish climbed onto the back of the dragon, she continued speaking. You should know that you are the only one who can see me, Wish. I manifest myself to only those who I want to see me, because I have noticed that many have chosen to bully others because they have me in their lives. That is why I am always picky, and I don't let just anyone have me. Now come on, kid, off we go. I promise that you will enjoy the view from up here. This is going to be so much fun. As Comfort lifted up into the sky, Wish held onto her wings, and he felt a warm feeling he had never experienced before wash over him. How long will it last? He found himself wondering as they lifted off and moved onward. Okay, so that was chapter 1, the first 4 pages of the book Wish by Damien W. Burns. So this is my pen name. So, hope you enjoyed listening to this. And if you would like to leave any comments, you're welcome to do that. So I am going to try to put this on, I'll do my best to put this on, hopefully on Facebook as originally, and then on maybe my Instagram if I'm able to put this full length on there, and also on my YouTube channel as well. Alrighty, well, thank you again for giving me your time, and have a good night, good morning, good evening, wherever it is that you are. Bye.